Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we'll be talking about origin stories. What makes a man? What makes a superhero? The literal lifeblood of comics and movies about comics. But basically, we're going to be talking about what, like, not only just like origin stories in film, but mostly just origin stories in general.
Yeah,
what are
in
some
comics,
of our favorites?
different versions, how they sort of get retooled for modern audiences.
It happens all the time. They are constantly being retconned, changed some way.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that we can delve deep into a lot of different topics and a lot of different superheroes. But just to start it off, I feel like origin stories have become these organic things that can change, but they're their own mythos in and of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
In comics, it's all mythos, but the origin story itself becomes like certain beats have to happen to feel like the origin story of the person. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
Have you felt what they call like origin story fatigue?
Oh,
I think
my
that
God.
I think that kind of ties into just comic book film fatigue in general.
yeah, I mean that's definitely like that's a whole thing here. Is that I do not need more origin stories. If we're talking Marvel Universe, if we're talking any Marvel film,
I'm really
I
just
don't
thinking-
need origin stories. I need maybe a montage, maybe a quick look at. If we have to look at something, and it's going to sound crazy, but Zack Snyder understood how to, get a fucking origin story out of the fucking way. Like, he was like, here's a montage of what happened to Batman at the beginning of Batman vs. Superman. Genius.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to, you can show what's important to Batman, because I feel like there's so many big topics here, because I was going to say, we're going to go all over the place. But you
I generally don't mind seeing so many origin stories. Usually there's enough of a different sort of flavor to it to keep me going.
Yeah.
We had brought this up when we did the first big catch-up episode going through all the movies we had missed. The only time I really felt it was during Doctor Strange.
Yeah, because you're just like, please.
Just get to the
just
cool
get
stuff.
to it. Like, I really don't need it. Like, I don't need unpowered superheroes for that often. Like, unless they're trying to say something.
Yeah, maybe if Stephen Strange on his own was interesting enough to carry it, you wouldn't care in the same way that Robert Downey Jr. carries Iron Man, and you like Tony Stark so much that you honestly, if he never went in the suit, you wouldn't care.
You wouldn't care. But it's one of those things that certain heroes, I feel like it's very important to tell their origin story. That's what the part that I was like, oh, this might be a tangent. You have to tell the origin story of certain heroes. Certain heroes, you don't. You could just be like, we're fucking to it. Like, the Flash, they feel like they have to say it all the time. I was struck by a bolt of lightning, and now I am the Flash. Like, they feel like they have to say it all the time. But I feel like the Flash is one of those that you're like, he's fast. Done. You don't have to know how he became the Flash. But when we're talking Batman, we're like, hey, it's literally about the trauma. Like, it's of course it didn't start that way. It started off as like, I need a call to action to be able to go out to fight crime.
But over time, it's an integral part of the pathos of the character.
Yeah,
which isn't really the case for someone like the Flash. The Flash, the way he gets his powers is just the inciting incident, but it's not like integral, you know what I mean?
And I would even say that Superman is questionable if you need an origin, because as important and as iconic as Krypton is, you don't need to blow up Krypton
but
again.
I think that's because everyone knows it, because it is so iconic.
Yeah, it's true. But I've heard the joke before. I don't want to see the Wayne shot again, and I don't want to see Krypton blow up. I've heard the joke.
Yeah.
But the problem with that joke is the Waynes being shot is an obvious turning point in that man's life to do what he does.
Yeah.
You know, but Krypton, blowing up doesn't have much to do with why Superman does what he does.
That
it's
is true.
just iconic. Like it's also the same thing with Green Lantern. Green Lantern, you don't need to know how he got the ring.
Yeah.
You just have to know what the ring does. Like, that's it. Like, it's one of those things that some heroes, you need to tell the story because it's important to who they are as a character, the start of who they are. And then there is so many stories that I just don't give two fucks. And you could jump right to it, please. Like, you know, like I just don't like. Yes, I feel like an origin story is a great way to bring in a new audience member, and that's the reason why. Let me sum up this entire podcast. We're going to talk for another hour, but a new origin story brings in new audiences. Done. Okay. End the podcast.
That's more or less. I usually try to keep it positive, specifically with Superman.
Yes.
The one thing that I look forward to with seeing Krypton blow up for the Up Team time is I just look forward to see how each different version interprets the aesthetic of Krypton and how Krypton is supposed to work. Because everyone kind of tweaks it to their own needs.
My devil's advocate to that argument is it's not important that Krypton blows up. What's important about Superman is how he grows up.
Yeah.
He's like, of course, because we have Red Sun, we know it's important why he grows up. But but it literally is. It's he's raised with these Midwestern values. He's raised with these American Midwestern values, and that is something that makes Superman the symbol of justice. Like, I know I'm quoting fucking My Hero, but that's it's important. And but then I brought up My Hero. Oh God, that's a whole argument. We'll bring that up way later.
We'll bring that up way later. To do that as like a topic, we could briefly go into it because the thing about My Hero is that we're still witnessing the origin technically.
But that's the thing. I have such a fatigue towards origin stories in film and in anime especially. Like, there's so many anime that's like, how did this guy start? You know, like, that's why everyone loves One Punch Man. They're like, what's his origin? Oh, he did a lot of push-ups and he ran a mile and and now
that's the joke.
Yeah, but like, that's the thing is they know that there's this fatigue in origin stories, but My Hero goes against all of that and somehow engrosses you in each origin story, in each one. That's why I didn't want to get into it, because it literally is the antithesis of what I'm saying is like, hey, stop doing so many origin stories because we don't need it as a conscious audience. We don't exactly need it. But then I watch My Hero and I'm like, give me another origin story. I'm like, where the fuck is this one? Like, you know, it's one of those things that like, it works so well in the medium of the show that you want more of it. And sure, it can feel like, oh, here's another one. You're there for that, you know, like, but I think I feel like it goes against the topic. Is that My Hero is a hard one because it's genre defying instead of defining. It's defying. It literally takes a genre and it goes, fuck you.
Yeah, and almost the entire point of the series is that this is an entire origin.
Yeah.
And that the entire, what you're witnessing is the entire origin story, and the end game is post-origin.
Yeah. It's why.
And it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing about it.
Because I don't think... I don't think that's the thing. What I'm saying is that I don't think Marvel or DC could pull this off. Like, I don't think many other mediums could pull this off.
The only way they'd be able to pull it off is it would never be part of the mainstream universe. No. It would be some offshoot, like Earth 1 for... It would be some offshoot like Earth 1 for fucking DC, or even the Ultimates to some extent.
But also My Hero, I feel like Disney should be watching My Hero to learn how to do X-Men, because I know you give a fuck about X-Men, but I don't give two fucks about X-Men. Hear me, fight me on Twitter, my hashtag, Frank. I don't give two fucks about your X-Men.
What's a character that you like that I don't give a fuck about, or a property specifically? I don't know, I can't really think of one immediately.
I don't know, plenty of things, I'm sure.
It's like, no, Frank, fuck that character.
No, I'm just kidding. Because
wrong.
I do enjoy a lot. I enjoy Wolverine. I enjoy a lot of X-Men stuff. But I think overall, most X-Men stories feel overcrowded. And that's the one lesson that they should take from My Hero is that even though you got a billion heroes on screen, you know each one of them, and you know they're like what they do, and like you're with it. Like,
that's always been sort of my criticism of the X-Men as well, is because the contradictions between them and the Marvel Universe proper always keep piling up, which to the point where I didn't mind the fact that that Fox had the X-Men movies to themselves, because I feel like they're honestly better off in their own universe, to be honest.
It's going to be weird when they have to start to mix in. Like, it will take, I feel like, a Avengers vs. X-Men movie. Like, that's the obvious choice, isn't it? To be like, hey,
I'd
let's
imagine
bring
the
them in
game
this
plan
hard.
is to really just sprinkle them in throughout over time, take their time, and then have the big culmination.
No, it's true, and I'm not saying that there hasn't been great X-Men titles that have done this, that have gotten you involved and gotten you really like, oh wow, I love this team. I'm just saying overall, the problem with X-Men is they love to bring in new characters, and sometimes you feel like, who the fuck is this guy?
And that's sort of like the inherent fallacy of like the mutant thing, of like it being more or less its own race.
Yeah. It's just,
and the advantage of My Hero is that just
everybody,
the societal norm is superheroes.
Yeah, and exactly. That's the main difference, and it's why X-Men can be very poignant. Instead, not that My Hero is not always poignant, but like, is that X-Men could be it can say things about race that like My Hero could never touch on. You know, like,
it's really just like sort of a broadened umbrella for minorities in general. Like if you go in the comics, it was definitely leaning more towards race. If you went for like the original like Fox films, it was definitely leaning on like the homosexuality aspect as like an allegory. So it keeps it broad enough that you could apply a lot to it. You can project.
And all I'm saying is that they are not good at handling origin stories for the X-Men often. Like, we are talking about most of the ones that we love are ones from the 70s, guys. We haven't had a good X-Men in a fucking while, unless you talked about the dragon. Like,
unless you get into like some real complicated stuff.
Of course there's some fun ones, but like overall, you just like, if we're talking iconic.
And plus X-Men fucks with time a lot, so you get to weird stuff like Cable or like X-Man. Don't even get me started on X-Men.
But we want to stay on topics of origin, and let's start with some of our favorite guys. Let's go through these.
I think some of our easy low-hanging fruit would be Spider-Man.
So Spider-Man, this is one of those ones that it's almost it is a meme to be like Uncle Ben's dying again.
Yeah, I would divide it up to the different versions.
When Marvel there was that meme that were like, oh, Marvel's gonna make their own Spider-Man, and they're like, look, Peter looking at Uncle Ben, and he's crying.
There's the one Lord of the Rings meme that I loved when we were worried that, because there was that worry that Sony was gonna keep Spider-Man to themselves, and we were gonna get another freaking reboot.
Yep,
and it was just
another
looks
one.
like Uncle Ben's back on the menu, boys.
And it is a joke because it's also one of those things that my wife didn't watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse because she was like, I'm not watching another Spider-Man origin story. And I was like, I hate to say it, but it has 5 different Spider-Man origin stories, but it's fantastic.
Spider-Verse actively
it's exactly the same way as My Hero, where even though it's always an origin story, it's moving the story forward, and that's what helps.
And plus, that's another thing where it's part of the joke. There's the running gag that there are so many origin stories. It's like, this is the last one, I promise.
I feel like that happens with origin stories, is they can feel like they're not moving the story forward, that they're feeling like a prequel. Like, they're not moving anything. That's the reason why Batman's works so well, I feel, is that it's an origin story where he's constantly working towards being a the Batman,
Yeah.
you know, like, and that's why Superman works. He's constantly working towards it. And that's why Doctor Strange didn't work. He's like, I'm depressed and I don't know what to do, and I'll climb up a mountain, and I found a mountain. And like, and it's just like, you're like, shut the fuck up and just get to the shit.
I love how you said, I climbed up a mountain, I found a mountain.
I did it. Like, it's one of those things that if an origin story does not move the story forward, it feels useless.
Yeah, and what tends to happen specifically with Spider-Man, if we're just talking strictly Peter,
Yes.
it's less
Strictly
about
Peter at the moment.
the components that change with the origin story
Yeah.
and more about the tone. Like, if you wanted to directly compare 616
Yeah.
with, like, original Stan Lee, Steve Ditko versus Ultimate with Brian Bendis,
Yes.
then everything is more or less there. It's just in the Ultimate Universe, Oscorp is basically behind
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
And it's
Behind
just
it
a
all.
matter of tone. Ultimate Spider-Man came out in the early 2000s, so it was
it
meant to be
wanted
like
that
the urban hip with the teen Spider-Man. Oh, dude, I did a big reread of the entirety of Bendis' Ultimate
Yep.
Spider-Man last year, and it was wild to get some of those early issues because everyone's like in early 2000s garb.
Yeah.
And stuff like, wow, I am transported.
And it's true. He was like really tapping into it at the moment. But what's interesting about those stories, is its tone. It's all about like if we're talking Stan Lee's origin story, it's kind of like it's a moral lesson, you know,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
it's like, hey, you gotta, you know, like we gotta, like, hey, you gotta step towards this action. With Sam Raimi's one, it's almost a guilty thing. It's almost like I wasn't there fast enough, and I'll never be there fast enough if I'm not out there saving.
It definitely leans more towards the former than the latter because Raimi's admitted that like his reverence for Spider-Man is specifically like those early issues, like the original Stan Lee and Steve Ditko stuff. And I mean, you can gather that just by the tone of those movies alone, which may or may not be your preference depending on who you ask, but you can't deny that that isn't Spider-Man.
It's not the tone.
It's just not. It might not be yo Spider-Man.
Oh man,
But yeah, I would agree that it definitely like leans more into the guilt. Like the Uncle Ben thing is something that hangs over him. It's something that hangs over him in the comics, but I don't think it impedes him enough like it does in the movie. But given that it's a film and you don't have a million different stories to tell because you got to get one out each one a month, you have to keep that thematic like conflict strong.
Yes. And then you have Ultimate, which is more of an avenging thing. It's like I must step up to fight off Oscorp because they caused Ben's death, sort of. You know, like it's kind of it's funny because it's fundamentally still Peter, and he's still acting like Peter, but his motivation changes in these origin stories, and that's usually what happens in these. Is that we have motivation changes, we have what drives them as a change.
And that's kind of more or less what the first Amazing Spider-Man film had tried to do. Like those two films definitely tried to lean more towards like the ultimate version of Peter to like both to mixed results, especially for the second one.
Very
much for the
that second one.
But taking the original film for what it is and specifically about how it tells the origin, even back then people were already just like, we really got to sit through this again.
Yeah.
But I didn't really mind the way it was executed, except for like some of the dumber things they had to like sort of sidestep around.
So, but you don't like Homecoming, though. You're like,
well,
so that's
Homecoming I don't consider an origin story. It is
sort of
it
is. Like,
it's just because Spider-Man is more or less already established by the time we get to Homecoming, so it's weird to consider it an origin story, even though it's still like, I'm still not up to speed yet.
Yeah, I'm not Spider-Man.
I'm still learning a lot, but
yeah.
And it's not that I dislike Homecoming. It's just Homecoming has like no tension.
Yeah, it's fair.
Like it's just kind of fluff. I mean, it's entertaining fluff, but that's kind of what it is. So I didn't even like count it because I don't really lean more towards it.
Okay, yeah, sure enough.
But the only thing I didn't like about the way the first Andrew Garfield film did is just sidestepping around dumb stuff like, well, we did the iconic wrestling match in the Raimi film, so we can't do that again.
Yeah.
So what if he just happens to like fall in an abandoned building with a wrestling ring and he sees a mask. He's just like, I got it.
Yeah, right. Again.
I understand now. But then that also has its own sort of poignant moments. Like, I love the scene with he gives the kid the mask.
Yeah, that's nice. Like, you know,
Like there's a lot of
there's a lot of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man that is really solid.
There's
Like,
a lot of-
I like the first one. I like the first Amazing Spider-Man for what it is. I'm not saying it's a great film. I'm not saying, wow, this is the best Spider-Man film. I'm just saying, for it being basically 500 Days of Summer director coming in and being like, but what if I did Romantic Spider-Man? And they were like, sure. Like, they were like, yeah, sure, let's do Romantic Spider-Man. Like,
what if the love interest was more than just an object? Just like, what if the chemistry was way better?
Yes, absolutely. It does.
But it's just a different thing.
Yes.
I think the next one to talk about now that we're more or less done with Peter, since technically MCU Spidey hasn't had like the origin.
Yeah.
We haven't seen Uncle Ben get shot.
Yeah,
because no one wants to see it. But we could talk about Miles as in like ultimate Bendis' version versus Spider-Verse.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is almost impressive.
This one's an interesting one.
Like, because they do a good job.
And they change quite a few things.
Yes, the Prowler does not go down like that. So,
Yeah. Not only that, like they specifically change a lot of like Miles's elements in Spider-Verse because of Homecoming.
Yeah.
Because they admitted it. Just like Homecoming had cherry picked so much of like Miles's stuff to add in that they had to now change it to conform to that new status quo.
But I have to give it
out.
to Ultimate Spider-Man Miles when it starts. It's grittier. Like, you got to give it to Bendis there. He tells like an actual New York story.
Yeah.
Like, I love Into the Spider-Verse. This tone would have not worked as well, but like the violence of the streets of New York is very prominent in that story, and I feel like it's very important, but that would work in a children's film.
Also
there's
also the completely different characterization of just the Prowler in general.
Yeah.
In Bendis' version, Prowler is manipulative.
Yeah.
And he wants to try and force Miles into doing crime with him. And when he dies pretty much like spitting in Miles' face, just like, you did this, you're going to end up just like me. Whereas in Into the Spider-Verse, like, they get along, like, they both love each other, and they do the Uncle Dying, but it's not the way you expect, and it's a different sort of context, so they get you, they surprise you, they kind of pull the rug from under you.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's super well done.
It is super well done. I love Into the Spider-Verse, and like, and it really is a fantastic film for showing off how an origin story can be done, because it also it's about speed, you know, like they really just like, they're like, if we're telling one origin story for a long distance over the film, but the other origin stories are like, bang,
and
and
Into the Spider-Verse, as much as I love Bendis' run on Ultimate, Into the Spider-Verse is actually a much more poignant passing of the torch story, because the entire point is there's a bunch of Spider-Man here.
Yeah.
And
by this, it's like, oh, Spider-Man's dead. Hey, that's kind of disrespectful for you to be wearing that because he's dead.
But
like,
you know what? You're a good kid.
Yeah, you're a good kid.
That and the Death of Spider-Man storyline, it's kind of contrived.
Yeah. It's just like...
It's just the way he goes out.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't buy it.
I'll take my Captain Kirk Spider-Man that dies too in Spider-Verse. So
but
I'll take
Into the
that.
Spider-Verse has that thing of like, this is just about a bunch of Spider-Man. We've already had our stories. This is your story. It just feeds into that whole thing of just like, anyone can wear the mask.
Yeah, and that's an important part about Spider-Man, is that the mask can be moved around. Like,
the thing about Spider-Man is that Spider-Man should fundamentally be an everyman or every kid to take up the mantle.
It doesn't have to be Peter Parker.
Yes,
is the problem.
Which is why I took like huge umbrage with the thing in Amazing Spider-Man 2 that is just like, only someone of the Parker bloodline can be a Spider-Man. I'm like, that's stupid.
You're just like, no, please.
No, that misses the entire point.
But moving on to another hero, because we got a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a
heroes-wise.
bunch. I actually want to, let's see here. Just as sort of
Spider-Man.
like a detour as opposed to going to the next big hero, I would like to talk about Wonder Woman.
Oh, like, so Wonder Woman...
Specifically, like, All-Star Comics versus, or Sensational, really, versus the animated film versus the live-action film, the Patty Jenkins
versus
film.
New 52.
Versus New 52, definitely.
And then because there is some big fundamental changes here.
Yeah.
And it's not often the same story being told. There's some similar elements. There's always
Usually Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor. Like,
Yeah,
I
to an
feel
extent.
Steve Trevor is the key to the outside world. So
The one that
often
they
use him.
kind of push off the most with the Steve stuff is probably the New 52.
Yeah.
Because they tried to, like, make Steve his own man. He was, like, leading his own team and
Yep.
stuff like that. And they had already... Wonder Woman had already been established, and they had a history, but we
Yeah.
didn't really get much details onto what that history was.
Yeah.
You could tell they were just kind of bitter exes.
And that's for me my favorite Wonder Woman origin. There's several great Wonder Woman origins, but my favorite is the New 52. And then I also love, who's the other one who does a great origin story? There's another one that does an awesome one. I feel like it's Grant Morrison.
If we're talking
but-
about just good Wonder Woman runs, then you're probably thinking either Simone or...
she does a great. I mean, she's just always great.
what's his name? Dan Jurgens.
Dan Jurgens, yeah. Dan Jurgens, damn, he's good. But it really, I always, Brian Azzarello's New 52 Wonder Woman is my favorite Wonder Woman
Yeah, it's
origin.
fantastic, but it's also like not your traditional
No.
Wonder Woman, which is a major point of contention with people about it. It's a great run.
Oh, it's a great run. So let's talk a little bit about it. Like most, the reason why I like the New 52 one is it changes who Wonder Woman is.
Yes,
Like,
and that's also the big thing that like gets under people's skin.
yes. And I'm sure there's somebody being like, Frank, shut the fuck up. That story's terrible.
Yeah,
But-
it was one that I was hesitant about at first. So the original version is usually Wonder Woman was sculpted out of clay,
Sculpted out of
and-
clay.
by Hippolyta, and she prayed to the gods to bring this sculpt to life so she could have a daughter. And depending on the version of the origin, sometimes it's Zeus who sculpts it with her, sometimes it's Zeus who gives her, who
Yep.
brings it to life. It varies.
Yes.
But that's usually the one consistent thing. Sculpted from clay and then brought to life, which makes sense if you're talking about like Greek myths
Yes.
and stuff like that. And what they did for the New 52 was instead retcon that. It's like, no, that was a lie. You're actually just the daughter of Zeus.
Yes.
Which, taken at face value, is super generic and lazy. But the way it's actually executed by Azzarello in the book is fantastic.
Yes,
because of
because-
his reimagining of the Greek gods.
But yes, exactly. He changes up what the Greek gods do and mean for the DC universe, and also it's cool that she's a demigod like Hercules or like somebody like she's basically. It makes it why she's just as powerful as Superman for me. You know, like before it's just like, oh, she's down with the power of the gods, but now it's like, yo, she's a god. You know, like she's basically a god. That's the only reason why I dig that is it's like it gives this little bit more meaning to the power.
Yeah. Like I went with it because it was so well executed, but in the hands of someone else, it could have made her so much more generic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But when you were talking about the movie, so
I mean, as far as the animated film is concerned, that kind of keeps it the same. It's like it's the clay, the sculpted clay brought to life, and it's about like her journeying to the new world with Steve Trevor, which is something that the live action film also echoes. Yeah. But as far as the two different versions, I tend to lean more towards the live action film because it also, the entire thematic through line is it's about war.
Yeah.
In general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, exactly. Wonder Woman stepping up to, like, stop these wars. You know?
It works much better as not only sort of a coming-of-age story for her, because she's sort of like this naive fish out of water who's just lived on Paradise Island all her life. She doesn't know the real world.
Jesus. But yeah, no, and I really do enjoy Wonder Woman. I think that movie is a great movie, but I really do like the animated film. I feel
do,
like,
especially in a time before we had the live action film, so it was kind of all we had.
Yeah.
But even without that like caveat, that still was a really good movie.
yeah, it really was, and it's the dialogue. I feel that really kills it in that version.
I mean, when you have Nathan Fillion as Steve
Yeah.
Trevor, you know you're in good hands.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's a tricky one for Wonder Woman. They have to like modernize it, but also keep the themes. You know, because this is all about femininity and female empowerment and feminism, and you know, like
changes meaning by the decade.
Yeah, it's like when it first started, it literally was about BDSM. Like, we're not fucking around. Go watch. It's on Amazon Prime.
You're talking about
what's that movie called?
Oh, I know, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. I think. It's called,
the Wonder Woman,
like
and it's basically the story of the guy who wrote Wonder Woman
Yeah.
and how he got that started. And you should probably go watch that movie.
To an extent, it started out as like a kink, then it was modernized. Then,
But that was the female empowerment of the time, and
Of
it
the time,
still
yeah.
is,
And
in a
then-
way. But like it was even
it's
more
just
than
one branch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then there was the the version from the 80s.
Ooh.
Was it the 80s where she had like the silver suit?
Oh, Carter's one
It
where
was
she
like
spins.
it was Super Charlie's Angels. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about the TV show.
Oh, not the TV show.
Comics.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes.
It was the one that Dennis O'Neil did.
Yeah,
That he's just
yep.
like, I'm sorry about that one, guys. Where like she lost all her god powers and she just kind of became like a secret agent for a while.
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
was taught by a wise Asian monk or something. You're like, what is this? What is happening?
You're like, wait, no. And then I feel like it comes with, like the ditching of Steve Trevor. It's like that's part of it, but then also it's like with the changing times, it's about having a supporting.
Yeah, we go back and forth on the Steve Trevor thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's about just like, oh, Steve, I don't need you. You're just a pet. She's like, no, Steve, you're my everything. And I would say that the Patty Jenkins films kind of strikes a really good balance. Like, at least they have chemistry and there's sort of a reason why they're into each other.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it works. Now moving on, should we move on to
Yeah, we could pick another hero.
Another
Just
hero.
Run
here.
through the gamut again.
Run through another gamut again.
Superman.
So there's I mean, we've kind of already stepped on some Superman's territory here, but let's get down to it. There is a lot of different fucking Superman origin stories constantly. This is one of those things that is constantly being redone, and there's some masterful strokes. There's All-Star Superman. There's
All-Star Superman kind of sums it up in a page.
it up. Yeah,
which
but
is
it's
amazing.
That's what I'm saying. Is that one page is better than most comics on
Yeah.
Superman's origin. Like I'm talking literal fucking shelves of Superman shit. That one page is better than most of it. Like it's one of those things that's just incredible. And if you should read All Star Superman at some point if you haven't.
So the original one was just the old Action Comics one.
Yep,
It's
the original.
fairly simple. It's just like
they're
Random
like,
blew
must
up,
save baby, send baby
babies
outside.
baby. Good.
And then
we got
we've brought in a couple more. We've brought in some environmental problems happened to Krypton. We've brought in there was a terrorist blowing up Krypton.
sometimes it's like a star exploding.
Sometimes
always
it's Zod's
varies.
problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not Zod. Sometimes there's been times where it's been Jor-El's fault. Jor-El was like an asshole in one version. I forget which version, but
It just varies. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the end game is Planet Go Poof.
Panic poof.
Yeah. The
and-
weirder one about, say, like the John Byrne version
Yes.
is, which the Snyder film does take a little bit of elements from, but the weird thing about the John Byrne one is that in that version of Superman, Kryptonians don't really breathe so much as they like project
Clone?
it's sort of like clones where they like project their genetic makeup through like a program, and that's how they like create beings. I get it was just like John Byrne
Being like, sci-fi.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
he's like,
reinventing
sci-fi?
Superman, so let's really lean on some weird sci-fi shit.
Sci-fi?
Which was like subsequently retconned by the time we got to Birthright.
Oh God, Birthright. And there's a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of. Wait, go into Birthright a little bit more because I don't remember
Birthright
much. Birthright
was
at
the
moment.
one with Mark Waid. It's the one that ends with like the belated message where he actually gets where the elves actually get to see Superman as he's on Earth because of the time differential when he travels.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's
that was
one where
cute.
he has the giant shield that he picks up out of the ground to like stop an oncoming attack. Birthright is. And it tends to be like the fan favorite version of the origin.
Ooh.
We had actually, back in the Real Book Zone at Batman days, we had actually compared it to Secret Origin by Jeff Johns, and you and I were both more into that one.
Yeah, definitely. Because Secret Origins is okay. You get Brainiac.
yeah, the
like
thing
get
I like
Brainiac as a main
The thing I
villain
like
taken
about
down.
Secret Origin is that it's kind of just succinct.
Yeah,
Really charming.
yeah.
And it kind of gets everything that you need. Not only is it just like Krypton blew up, grew up on a farm, but it also gets the Legion of Superheroes bullshit out of the way too. So you're just like, yeah, here are the pieces. That's your Superman. Up to speed. Let's move on.
Let's keep moving.
As opposed to something like, I did want to bring this up, is the animated series version.
Yeah,
Which is the Origin's 3 episodes.
It's long.
Yeah, 1 episode on Krypton, 1 as he's growing up, and the 3rd one
And
when he's finally in Metropolis.
Let's say this now. If you have not seen Superman the Animated Series, if you were like, man, I love Batman the Animated Series as a kid, and you need to watch Superman the Animated Series.
Superman the Animated Series is good. I feel like it's on the weaker spectrum of the other DCAU
Yeah, I mean,
shows.
if we're comparing it to Justice League,
If you're
that's
comparing
hard.
it to Justice League Unlimited, Batman Beyond, I feel like
It's
it's
hard.
among on the lower end.
But that's like saying which Pixar movie's not as bad as
That's
the other
true.
Pixar movies. Like it's like sure there's gonna be one that you're like, well, that's not as good, but like most of them are great.
And plus Static Shock. So
It's-
it's not the weakest.
yeah, we're not saying.
But yeah, I feel like as far as the best one up to this point, because we kind of breezed
Yeah.
over the Richard Donner
Yeah.
film, that one
They
has
do a
this-
great job.
That one's fantastic.
Because, I mean, Marlon Brando is fantastic as Jor-El.
And it has like this simple iconography. Like you think of Krypton or the Fortress of Solitude, and no matter what the comics do, you will continue to think about crystals.
Yeah.
Like just that crystalline.
which
look
really
to it.
wasn't the thing before
No, in
the
Fortress,
movie.
the fortress was just kind of a fortress.
An ice fortress. Like
Yeah.
before. And now
Sometimes
it's
it looked like a castle. Sometimes it was like a big dome or something.
Yeah. And this, the crystals really like changed it up. It was wild,
Yeah.
Now, okay, so we Man of Steel also does an origin story if we're talking Richard Donner. So we're talking Richard Donner's like simple, iconic, gets to it,
Yeah.
tells you the story, and it's satisfying. Like I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
it tells it like an epic.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the Donner film.
exactly. It's like yes,
But because I mean the film was originally envisioned as like a 2-part epic.
Yeah.
The origin for 1 and then fighting Zod and the other Kryptonians for 2 before meddling happened. The interesting thing about the way Krypton is done in Man of Steel, and Snyder and Goyer both admitted this, is that they kind of wanted to drop you in the middle of the action.
yeah.
They said they envisioned what you see of Krypton in the beginning of Man of Steel as like you just got dropped into the 3rd act of an entirely different movie. Just like there was a whole other Krypton movie you didn't see.
You didn't see.
You just got to the climax of it.
And I really enjoyed that. Like, I didn't need the, like, I wanted just the jump in, you know? Like, I didn't want the, like, oh, yeah, something's wrong with the planet. Why won't you listen to me? Like, I wanted that, like, let's get down to it. Let's fucking get ready, you know? Like, let's blow this goddamn planet, baby. Like, and they do such a good job at Man of Steel. I know most of you are being like, Man of Steel, but like Man of Steel's origin story is exceptional in that it keeps moving forward. It is constantly moving forward in that we were, like I said before, it is accomplishing story beats, it is moving forward, and you get to you're Superman at the end, you
Yeah.
know, like, and maybe they took it the wrong way after that, but we could say Man of Steel is still a very solid just origin and
it's
wrap.
interesting to note the differing relationship between Jor-El and Clark
Yes.
throughout each of these origins, because that also
Yeah,
comes into play.
it's a huge
Even
part.
beyond Krypton blowing up, there's sort of that legacy of the father.
Yeah, and it's not only Jor-El, it's his
Jonathan Kent.
Jonathan Kent. It's like Jonathan's just as important.
Yeah.
As Jor-El, like almost more so. And you have some iterations where John is somebody you look up to, but he's gruff, and you have like these really caring father figures, you know, like, and it's interesting.
Yeah, there's always varying interpretations, because there's like sort of the leaning towards more of like an Uncle Ben type Pa Kent, where he's just like, I'm irreverent and I'm sort of holier than thou. And I'm the perfect role model. But then others are just like, well, I mean, I'm just a farmer. I'm just like this blue collar dude.
Yeah.
So I got to teach you some real American values, kid. So it varies.
Yeah, and
it's an interesting thing to see. And what also varies is just Jor-El's presence, because sometimes once the planet's done, it's gone. Or if you get to Donner, like his presence comes in once he gets to the fortress, and that's something that hangs over him. I mean, I'll bring this up as like a brief thing, because I wasted 10 years of my life watching Smallville. But that's also a big thing, because Jonathan Kent and Jor-El are like major characters that the entirety or the majority of that series until Jonathan Kent inevitably dies, because Jonathan Kent
you gotta
always
die.
gotta die.
You always
unless
gotta
it's-
die. Like
unless
Uncle
it's
Ben.
the DCAU.
yeah,
Kill.
kill that bitch. Kill that bitch. But it's so wait, so small, but like they were there the whole time in Smallville.
For the most part, Jonathan Kent's throughout most of the series, then he eventually dies of a heart attack. Jor-El is present throughout the entirety of the series, and they're always like conflicting of just like, you need to be this. It's like, no, father, I just want to be happy, but you need to be this. It's very much like sprinkling the same sort of conflict they had with the Donner film, because they definitely pull some like shorthand from the Donner film, even like there's the crystals and shit still, but there's more of like, we gotta pad this drama out because I'm a teenager. We gotta keep
teenage
this
show.
going. I'm not Superman yet, Dad. But the interesting thing about Jor-El is that he's actually voiced by Terrence Stamp in the show, who played Zod in Superman 2.
Really? That's really wild.
It's cool.
That's crazy. But it's the thing about Superman is that it is more about how he was grown up. You know, like it really is. It's really about Jonathan than it is more about Jor-El. Even though Jor-El can have a big presence, it's like Jor-El almost has to be gone for Superman to move forward, you know, like, which is wild, you know, like, it's weird.
That's always been sort of the ongoing conflict of just like where I came from versus who I am. Like, that's technically my bloodline, just like family is who raised you as opposed to your DNA, that sort of thing. And it varies from writer to writer. Just as an aside, because I do want to bring this up, because this is another version of the origin that I actually prefer to Birthright. No offense to Mark Waid. Mark Waid is one of our greatest working writers right now.
He's amazing.
But Superman for All Seasons.
Superman for All Seasons is so
by
good.
Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
So good.
So good, so irreverent.
So, oh man, I love that book. I remember just having so much joy while reading that book, being like, this is great. Like, this is real nice.
Just understands Superman so well.
And that's the thing is, I feel like if you don't, Superman's a hard character to like if you don't understand him. Like, it's one of those things that, as much as some people will be like, I don't want to see Krypton blow up again, if you do not understand who Superman is, you will just be like, well, he's too powerful. Like, you know, like you can't have him there. He's, you know, like who is he? You know, like, and if you don't understand how and who he is, you won't care, because you'll just think he's a generic superhero when really he's the OG baby.
Yeah. Birthright tends to be the go-to that people recommend. So like, this is what you should read if you don't understand Superman. It's like that and All-Star. I would lean more towards All-Star, and I would probably throw maybe not so much Secret Origin, because there's a lot of like comic booky stuff in there that if you're not familiar with like, who the fuck are the Legion of Superheroes? I think For All Seasons would be much
Yeah.
better because it's so much more self-contained.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, whoop, wrap that up.
Yeah.
Wrap that shit
Speaking
up.
of which, I actually
There's
didn't
also
think-
American Aliens.
that's what I was just about to say.
I love that we both were like,
it just
wait a
came to my
fucking
mind. I
minute.
didn't put it, like, I didn't write it down or anything, but I'm just like, you know what? That's a really interesting, like, reinterpretation of the origin is through American
Now,
Alien.
who wrote that one? I know
Max Landis.
Max Landis.
Yeah.
Now, Max Landis is a dividing figure in writing because he obviously has talent, but also has some bad movies that he's written.
And he has
you know,
his
like-
own controversies
Yeah.
beyond that, but who doesn't now?
Yeah, who knows? The thing about American Alien is that he really does. He changes the origin up again, you know, like in a positive way.
He opens the book immediately, like the advertisement on the back is just like, this is not a Superman story.
Yeah.
So it sort of prepares you. It's just super grounded, and it's a way of really humanizing Clark.
Yeah. Yeah, like really trying to get to the human element of who Superman is. Because you have the alien, like that's a classic Superman thing, the alien part of him and the human part of him, that maybe he's not human, but he's human, you know, like.
Yeah, and the interesting thing
Kinda like
about
Data from Star
American
Trek.
Alien is that it's definitely a way to modernize the character, and it's definitely a more realistic take without going too dour.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see a Superman really sort of coming up in the same struggles that you would more expect someone like Batman to have.
Yeah,
Where he's just
right.
like, I haven't really I haven't settled on a costume yet. I'm still kind of dealing with like my issues with my friends and stuff like that. And it doesn't tend to pull its punches about like the actual horrors of the world and why we need someone like this.
Exactly.
But it was it was a really interesting book.
It's an interesting
It
read.
was one I had no idea what to expect
Now-
other than
Now, for ones that just try to change things up for changing them's sake, is Year One. I am a huge fan of the Year One series of DC books. I really feel like it's sad that they did not continue. Not Year One. Year One. Yeah, I'm saying the right thing. Wonder Woman Year One, Superman Year One, and no,
Earth One.
Earth One. Sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, Superman
'Cause
Year One is...
you're looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah,
Frank? Earth One. Sorry,
Superman Year One is the new like
it's another
Frank
thing.
Miller
Yeah, that's
one.
the new Frank Miller one. But
Ugh.
we won't talk about that. I'm talking about Earth One.
Yeah.
So Earth One, I was a big fan of Earth One as a series because it's cool to have a completely different universe where we can explore origin stories in a completely different way.
It's more or less tackling the DC characters with the same mentality that they did for the Ultimate Universe in Marvel. Like,
Yeah,
it's
like-
that same mentality, and it's really cool to see.
Superman, Earth One is pretty good. There's 3 or 4 books that came
There's
out.
3.
There's 3. I have all 3 and I enjoy them, but they are kind of like the Coca-Cola of Superman stories. You know,
mean?
like in that yeah, it's exactly what you expected, but we changed it up a bit, you know,
Yeah.
like, so it's like Coke Zero maybe, like, but it tries to add some more teeth to it, so it's not Diet Coke, you know, like, it's
Man of Steel really leaned a lot towards like Earth One. It felt very much the same way in terms of like tone, presentation, and even like the climax almost kind of follows it beat for beat. It's really interesting.
It is weird. And it's funny because I don't remember the first book as much as I remember 2 and 3, which is funny because they're still origins, but they're not dealing with the actual origin story. And it's one of those things that I really enjoyed those books at the time, but it's funny to see how different they all were. Like Batman Earth One was trying to be like realistic Jeff Johns Batman, as much as realistic without continuity as possible.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it came out at the same time as The Dark Knight, which both are trying to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
Bring Batman more realistic, modern day thing, and have the villains also reflect that. And how much of a failure Earth One is comparison to Dark Knight in trying to do that is
Batman
crazy.
Earth One.
It's not a bad story.
It's not a bad story, but it was like among the weaker of the echelon.
Yes.
I still haven't read Wonder Woman Earth 1. I did read...
I got that. It's great.
Yeah,
it's
no,
great.
I haven't read it yet.
It's
I
great.
did read Teen Titans, though. That I
Yeah,
enjoyed. Yeah,
that was fun. I enjoyed those.
Mm-hmm.
I really did.
I mean, with the Teen Titans one, it was basically, what if we turn the Teen Titans into Runaways?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you're like,
just
sure,
do it.
yeah, all right, do it up. Earth One is great. It's Grant Morrison.
For Wonder Woman,
yeah,
yeah.
for Wonder Woman. And that one is just it's Grant Morrison.
Yeah, it's one of those
Grant
ones
Morrison
that I
doing
just
Wonder
haven't
Woman.
gotten around to.
It's so
but want
it's
to
so
because
just like yeah,
it's Morrison.
Sure, yeah.
It's going to be some Morrison craziness. Plus, it's Yannick Paquette. And
Yeah.
I love his art so much.
Oh,
He used
man,
to,
he's so
he used to
good.
do Snyder Swamp Thing.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Yeah, he's so great. He's so good. I want more his comics. You know, like I want to own more of that. But moving on from
I
Superman.
mean, we were talking about Batman, so we
We're
might as
talking
well
about
like
that.
go into him now because there's a lot to talk
There's
about.
a lot
We had
of-
already
of
we
origin
like,
changes.
sprinkled a bunch, but the big like turning point would be year one as far as the comics is concerned.
Yeah. And what do you mean by that turning point?
Giving more of a pathos to the origin
Yeah.
as opposed to the original Detective Comics just being like, this is a means to an end.
Yeah,
As opposed to like
he learned from the
Miller's
greatest
just like-
masters, so he could be the best.
yeah,
like,
as opposed to year one being like, this is my curse.
yeah, exactly. I feel like yes, you're right on the money. There's a point before where Batman's origin was like, hey, that sucks, and I won't make it happen to anybody else too. That sucks, and I won't let that happen to anybody ever again. Like, you know, like it goes from being like, ha, to being like, ugh. And then now it's become like, that's the way we do Batman, you know, like
more or less.
is more or less. But there's some key changes to a lot of Batman, and I feel like there's key moments you can change out. You can change out both the parents have to die.
Obviously.
I don't think there's many origin stories. There's not many Batman stories where one or the other survive, other than Thomas Wayne surviving in some weird way in some story. I remember that happening. They were like, Thomas Wayne's still alive, and you're like,
Yeah,
fuck,
not
no.
counting other weird stuff like
Other weird-
Flashpoint and stuff like that.
Yes, other weird things. Yeah, Flashpoint. Is they have to die, but it also could change who kills them. Obviously, because we have the Joker this year, and it's like random chaos kills them in the Joker. We have
Joe Chill, which is the
Joe
one
Chill.
9 times out of 10, which I think works the best. That it should just be just some nobody,
Yeah, it's like it's just a random criminal,
and then the actual
but then
Joker
there's-
doing it, or
yeah.
Jack Napier at the time for Batman '89.
Yeah.
which makes sense for that movie because this was sort of a. We don't know if we're going to make another Batman movie. We just need to make this Batman movie and make it as complete as possible.
Yeah.
So he's going to avenge his parents' death by the end of this. So like, well, that's going to leave us in a real hole for the sequels. Don't worry about the sequels.
Yeah, don't worry about this. They were like, "Fuck them! I'll do a penguin and a cat next time." Fight. they're like, who cares?
Yeah, it made total thematic sense for like Jack Napier to be the
Yeah.
one who killed Batman's parents. Like, I had no issue with that.
No,
It's a different thing. We're talking about
made
one
sense.
self-contained movie as opposed to comics which have to go on forever.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to tell a one piece of art, you know, like you're trying to tell one story, and that leads you to trying to make it more complete, which I don't mind Joker killing as much as it makes it Joker the main villain of Batman's thing, which I'm not always like,
Yeah, they're already like tied together enough as like the arch nemesis thing. You don't necessarily
need
need
to
to
tie
tie him
him
into
in.
his origin. But to be fair, in this one, Joker dies at the end anyway,
Yeah.
so that's done.
And in Batman the Animated Series, it's Jack Napier again,
No,
or is
it's
it
not
Joker?
Jack Napier. It's just I don't even think they go into like Joe Chill stuff, but it's just implied that it's just some random.
It's
thug.
some random guy.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. And it's like it's one of those things that
They do keep the Jack Napier stuff that like he was a mobster before
Yeah.
he became the Joker that they pulled from '89, but he had nothing to do with her death.
Yeah, there's different ways, of course, like after the Waynes die, but it's important. Like I feel like also the Arkham games do it well when they're talking about the death because they make you go back to the alleyway.
Yeah, there's
and
the
it's like right in the middle of the story.
Yeah,
so
there's
like,
it's the Scarecrow segment because
Yeah.
he's hallucinating, and you get to like re-experience it that way, which is an intuitive way to get it done.
Yeah.
and it's interesting. What's also worth bringing up is Mask of the Phantasm, because
Yeah,
a good
I love
chunk of
Mask.
that film is about him first starting out.
Yeah.
And about the origin.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. That's the Joe Chill is in Mask of Phantasm.
No, we
right?
never actually see the Waynes get shot in Mask of the
Yeah.
Phantasm, but what we do see is like Bruce first starting out year one style
Yeah,
before he has the costume,
Yeah.
and him settling on stuff that he wants.
I was literally
and
the other
literally
day
sacrificing his happiness to become Batman.
Yeah, I was watching clips to find the clip for the Batsuit episode, and when the most redone clip from that movie on there is Alfred gasping when he puts on the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for some reason, people are like, "Yeah, that scene's badass." you're like, it is, but I didn't realize everybody and their mother had to repost it on YouTube. Like, it's just like,
It is
what
a
the
pretty
fuck
great
happened?
moment.
It's a great moment, but I was just like, what? Like, I was just like, there's 15 videos of this exact moment. Like, what was everyone like? Damn, that's a pretty good fucking Batman moment right there. Put that shit in there. But yeah, I feel like it's important to Batman, and I've said this a little bit, is that the Waynes dying is integral to, if I'm saying that wrong, integral to who Batman is, which is different than a lot of other superheroes. Like, and it's the same thing with Uncle Ben. It's very, like, sure, you can have another person die, but...
I think the advantage of that is that he needs that motivating factor to put on the costume, because Batman's not a superhero with powers.
No.
So whereas with other versions of other origin
They're
stories from
bestowed
villain-
with power.
Yeah, we need a reason that they have the power, so
Yeah.
that's where the origin comes in, as opposed to, because this is just a man, the origin needs to be more poignant.
Exactly.
It has to be much of a thing that hangs over him.
Exactly. And I feel like that's the main difference. It's like, sure, you could say, please don't shoot the Waynes again. Like, I've seen it again. It is literally part of it.
We've brought this up before, but every time they've done it, they've had a good reason.
Yeah.
If we're talking strictly movies, just the
Strictly
movies on
movies.
their own, just all the live action movies. In '89, they did it because one, it hadn't been done to
Yeah,
film
been done.
before, and they had to bring a full circle with the Joker.
Yep.
The next time we would see it again, or it would be alluded to, would be Batman Forever, because they were going into like the psychology of Bruce and everything,
Yeah.
like the symbolism and stuff like that. The next time after that was Begins, because we were straight up doing the
Doing a
origin,
new
which
one
we
again.
hadn't gotten
Yeah.
up until now. And then the next time after that was BVS, which they included because they needed the Martha thing.
Yeah.
And then with the Joker, they did it as a thematic point
For
for that film.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
that
just
film.
like, it's not like they're doing it on a whim.
Yeah.
Like, there seems to be a reason. It seems like every time it's just
Like,
like
sure, it's fun to kill the Waynes.
Yeah.
We all get it.
But it seems like
somebody has to kill the Waynes. It might as well be you. Like,
it seems like a bunch of people sitting at a boardroom. Guy sits at the end of the table, puts a revolver on the table, folds his hand together, says, "One of you convince me we need to kill the Waynes again." One of you convince me. And then someone's just like, "Whoa, what if we do this for this thematic reason? Then it brings everything full circle, and then it's thematically satisfying." It's just like, all right,
all right, well,
puts the gun away.
I'll let it slide.
Humor me.
Jesus Christ. So, but there's small changes, of course. New 52 tried to
0 year is an interesting
0
one.
year is pretty great.
Yeah.
0 year is wonderful.
It's a way to modernize it. It definitely likes to drop a few winks
Yeah.
at year one, especially didn't originate in year one. The whole, like, yes, Father, I shall become that.
It's gonna become the bad.
Yeah, because that definitely wasn't exclusive to year one. That was a thing before. But trying to echo that same sentiment in a different sort of context, and the fact that the fact that the Waynes being shot in 0 year is intercut with Batman's first big failure when he fails to stop Dr. Death and the blimps from flooding the entire city.
Damn, I love 0 year.
We're good.
Damn, I love 0 year.
Oh,
like,
man,
if
I
you
remember
haven't read it, it's one of those
I
things.
remember
where
when
you're
we were
like,
like skeptical, because it was like, man, as much as we love Scott Snyder, like
why is he doing
we
this?
need to do the origin again, which they really only did because they were content with keeping year one in continuity.
Yeah.
But as the New 52 continued, they're just like, no, it doesn't match up.
Yeah,
it
doesn't
match up
work.
at all.
Yeah, with the 5 year
So
continuity.
we just kind of need to make a new one.
Yeah. And like I feel like that's one
It's
of the better
to
ones.
take what is usually just a simple story of just like he starts out, he fails, but then he gets the costume, he gets into practice, and almost turn it into like almost a post-apocalyptic thing where like Gotham is flooded and the city's been completely taken over by the Riddler, and now we got like Mad Max Batman with ripped up
With a
sleeves
bike.
and a bike and a bow and arrow. You're just like, whoa. And he's fighting lions and he's killing horses.
Yes, he fucking. Oh my God, Scott Snyder had a thing where he just kept murdering horses.
Yeah, his
for
horses
a little
just
bit
kept
there.
getting shot.
He was like, "Fuck them horses." Like, he was like, "See that horse over there? Fuck that horse." Like he really just didn't care.
I wonder if he like tried horseback riding as a kid and it like bucked him off. He's just like, "You'll pay for that."
You always pay for this.
Of course, you realize this means war.
But it's one of those things that in the comics they'll change it up a lot. Little things, little things. But and one of my favorite little things they always change up is what movie they're walking out of. It's always either Mask of Zorro, like something superhero-y.
It tends to usually be Zorro. I don't think it was Zorro. I don't think they actually explicitly state what they came out of in '89, if I'm remembering correctly. Whereas most of the time it's Zorro. It was Zorro and BVS. In Batman Begins, it was the opera. It was Deflator Mouse.
Yeah.
Which makes it all the more on the nose. It's like you just happen to be watching an opera about bats. So like, whatever. But it makes sense that like these rich fogies are taking him to go see an opera.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, okay.
Bring your best pearls.
Exactly.
Yeah, it varies, but it's interesting to see how it sort of shifts with the times.
Yeah, absolutely. And they try to update it and make it more modern. I thought it was interesting to see it again in Joker. I know, like, why are we killing the Waynes again? But like,
yeah, but the fact that it gave it like a brand new context. With, like the societal thing, I'm just like, okay.
And I also liked a Thomas Wayne that wasn't altruistic.
Yeah.
I like, that's the thing, is we always get Thomas Wayne was good for the city. He was always trying to save the city, and that's why Batman looks up to him. Not, my dad was kind of an asshole and he didn't save the city and I should save the city.
That's
like
actually one of the best things the Telltale version of Batman does.
Yeah.
Is that they really lean on that. Like, Thomas Wayne in that version was literally in the mob's pocket.
Yeah.
And Martha was trying
and that's why they keep showing up to ask
and
Bruce.
Martha was trying to like get him out of that life, and she sort of succeeded, but he was still kind of dirty.
Yeah.
And the whole point is just like, in a way that we wish would happen in the comics, it's Batman just being like, you know what, I can be better than that. Like, I can accept the father I knew and reconcile the man he actually was and still be better than that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, man, the Batman Telltale games, pretty good. Especially Season 2. Season 2 dials it up to 11.
I have Season 2, I just haven't played it.
Oh, it has this whole thing. It has this whole thing where they give like Joker his own origin because they make their own specific version of him. And it's so fascinating. He like starts off as like Bruce's best friend and then slowly morphs into the Joker that we know from the comics, which sort of shifts depending on the choices you've made during the game. It's really interesting.
That's wild.
It's definitely like a must.
Yeah, and,
to like check out.
That's another weird thing too. If we're talking origin stories, Joker's origin is strange. We've gone from dump him in a vat of oil to dump him in society. You know, like
society,
it's like, but that's really like, if we're
varies.
talking Killing Joke,
if we're talking Killing Joke, the idea is that it's supposed to be ambiguous, so you can maybe accept that maybe he was a comedian who did a job for the mob as the Red Hood, or maybe it isn't.
Yeah,
maybe he started off as just a mobster who fell in a vat of chemicals, like in '89, and which got carried over into the animated series.
Yes,
maybe you can go with Snyder's Batman Endgame, where he's more like this Pennywise type figure, and you're just like, what?
Yeah, I do prefer Scott Snyder's play on Joker.
Really interesting. And the best thing is that it also keeps that ambiguous. So you're just like, that could be it.
That could be it, but
it also couldn't be, because the entire point, there's like this subplot of like maniacs who escape out of Arkham and kidnap a doctor,
Yeah.
specifically so they can tell her about the Joker, and everyone's story is different. So you're just like, ooh, Snyder, you're not going to put a definitive button on that because you're smart enough not to.
yeah, right. And that's really it. Is that it is Joker's origin can be ambiguous. It doesn't really matter, and it doesn't. It almost makes it more scary that you don't know why he's this way, you know, like, but you know,
Yeah, like your imagination is always going to be more interesting than what the actual plain answer
Yeah,
is. That's
of
the
course.
fundamental between a lot of things. You need to never underestimate the power of mystique.
yes,
An unanswered question is going to be more interesting in your head than when you actually get a definitive answer, which is why we should never know the Doctor's name.
Yeah.
Why we should never really have a definitive Joker origin in the comics.
in the comics.
With a movie, that's a different thing. It's more self-contained.
You could just
so-
be like, hey,
yeah.
this is Joker. Like, this is what
so
he
it
does.
doesn't really matter there. So, but aside from that, I think going away from Batman, since we've
Yeah,
talked a
because
lot about Batman,
we'll be on
what
Batman
I want to
forever.
talk about is how origins more so are morphed for the times. Specifically,
Yeah.
because we were talking about this earlier, not even necessarily superheroes, but just character origins in general, like Magneto.
Yeah, because
Or the Punisher, because we were talking about how stuff has to morph for the time.
yeah, because you do, like, every time there's this reboot of a universe, you have to be like, let's update it to the times. Now, what do you do with a character like Magneto? He is intrinsically tied to the Holocaust
Yeah, he is
and
a
World War
Jewish
II.
Holocaust survivor.
What do you do? Because at this point, he's getting so old,
Yeah,
he
it
shouldn't
was-
be a villain.
Yeah,
you know,
it was
like,
fine back in the day where he still would have been reasonably young if he went through it as a kid.
yeah.
But we're in 2020 now.
It's
like,
getting, he would be like 80,
he would be
90.
ridiculously
like,
old.
yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where you're like,
And you can't
it's-
do a
it's-
thing with that you do with the Punisher, where I think the original version it was Vietnam.
Vietnam, yep.
Then it got morphed to like Afghanistan, and it keeps they just changed the
To
war.
whatever war. What war's
Yeah.
happening today? Let's make
What's
that
the most
happen.
relevant war? He was from that one.
Yeah, they're like, Kuwait,
So
Iraq,
that's sort
and
of like
eventually war on drugs. Like,
Yeah. So it's sort of an easy transition because we as humanity just can't stop fighting.
yeah. So you're like,
Ain't that
buddy,
sad?
Ain't that sad? But,
But
it's
you
like,
can't. There's not really an equivalent for that. You can't really find.
not for Magneto.
No, not for Magneto.
Magneto.
You either need to.
like-
I don't know. You either need to find some way to like that he's young as part of his mutant gene, or you need to freeze him Captain America style or something.
Something like that. But I feel like they do a good job with First Class with trying to update it, but they still keep the
Yeah, but the benefit of First Class is that it's also a period piece. Like
Yeah.
First Class takes place in the
In the-
50s.
yeah,
So it's
exact-
not really much of a
Yeah,
problem.
it's
But
not
when
much
you
of a
get,
problem.
and the benefit of the original 3 X-Men films is that they never determined when they took place.
Yeah.
It was always the not too distant future, which was a thing we loved to do in the early 2000s.
yeah. They're like
Not too distant
sometime
future. So
close.
they never specified, which was smart. But it's still just like, you are way too old for this.
It's true, and the same thing can go for Batman. Is you can't say Batman started in 19 whatever he actually started in 1939. It's like you can't say he's the actual age he came out with. Same as like there's a whole comic that deals with this. Comic Generations. They literally go. They're like, this is how we could have connected all these.
Superman, Batman Generations by John Byrne.
Yes.
That's a great book.
It's a great book.
Summed up, it's basically the books start off in 1939, and it's a tale of Batman and Superman through the ages as if they aged in real time, and it's
Yeah.
really fascinating.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really solid, and I feel like that's the thing is you can't acknowledge that.
I think that was actually one of the first comics I read as a kid.
Yeah?
I read that. Yeah, I think the first Batman comics I ever read, I checked out that and Death of the Family. Death of the Family as a kid. So I think the first solo Batman book I ever read as a kid was Death in the Family.
Really? That's
which
so
is
funny.
hilarious.
I was reading some crazy comics
Yeah.
all over the place. Like, you know, like when I started, like when I liked comics as a kid, people would just buy me random comics like because they didn't know what to buy. So it was
the
like
way it goes.
I have some really weird comics, like, you know, like they're really old. I have some old Justice Society stuff, like, you know, like people were just buying me stuff. But my main comics I got started on, Bionicle, bitches. Bionicle comics came with fucking Lego magazine, and that was...
I used to get a Bionicle, like, every Christmas for,
yeah.
the 4 years. Just like, yeah, I got this one, I got this one. I used to have them, like, standing up in poses on, like, my headboard on my bed. It's like,
yeah, they were great.
We're getting way off topic.
We're getting way off topic. But it's like...
Another one... Well, no, that's sort of the thing. It's just hard to contend with. And I wonder, specifically when the MCU does get around to mutants, because they will, what they'll do for it.
Yeah, because it's hard to update these things. It's why Captain America was just like frozen, and then they sent him back. Because how are you going to explain a very like a guy like him in this current age?
Yeah,
you know,
you
like
can't really. There's just nothing really to equate it.
Yeah,
to.
you're
That's
just like
sort of the issue. You need to find some way to ride around it, and I don't really know what the answer is. I think.
They've obviously updated certain people pretty flawlessly, like Scarlet Witch and Vision were kind of clunky origin people that they just were like, and they're in the Marvel universe,
Yeah,
like, you know, like they're like
that's
they're
definitely
like
true.
they were able to take some clunkier characters that have clunkier origins and just be like, fuck
so
that, and bring it in.
I'm sure they'll find a way to ride around it. But I think, speaking of that, I think it's a good segue to, I think, a good section to maybe cap this off is our favorite origins put to film.
Ooh, that's a tough one because obviously Batman. No, I'm just kidding.
Because obviously Batman.
no,
Don't talk to me about anyone else.
No, there. I think I've already kind of said it. Is that there's something masterful about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse about telling an origin story. It is so good at it, you know, like it is just like it was able to tell so many so quickly, but also tell miles over a long bit. And, you know,
I do agree. I will mention a separate movie as sort of an honorable mention. Is Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah,
my reservations about the first Cap film is that you spend all this time on the origin, and the origin is done so well that when you finally get to what you came here for, which is Cap kicking ass in World War II, you kind of get like 10 minutes of it, and then he's frozen in the ice because we got to set up Avengers.
I know, and you're like, Jesus.
Because
like,
the way the origin is done is fantastic.
It is,
but
it's kind of a waste almost.
Yeah, the
way
they were able to modernize Steve Rogers as well as keeping the more tongue-in-cheek, like, propaganda stuff. Like, the most brilliant thing in that origin is that montage of him doing, like, the stage shows of him punching Hitler and stuff. That was fantastic. It was
makes me happy.
So clever.
Makes me happy.
But it's just too bad that the film sort of like rushes to get to the conclusion because we got to get this guy in the ice.
Yeah, and it's you could say that there's several Marvel films that do it. You know, like that they try to shoot for that, and they don't nail it. Like Hulk. Like if we're talking Incredible Hulk.
Well, Incredible Hulk doesn't do the origin.
No, it doesn't.
That's actually the interesting one. It sums it up in a montage.
Yeah, it sums
it up in the opening credits.
Yeah, and it's just like. But then, okay, so there's plenty of Marvel bad origin.
If you're going just by Phase 1 alone, every single movie besides The Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2, obviously, because it's a sequel.
Yeah, so, but Thor, we have to talk, like, if we're talking, Thor's not a good origin film. It's one of the ones that made me go, why is this an origin film? Yeah. You know, like, if we're talking about a movie that made me go, like, please stop. Like,
there's so many ways to make the origin interesting for Thor, and that's not it. But then again, that's just kind of Marvel in Thor with Thor in general. Yeah. Even when it gets good, like Ragnarok is really fun and really cool, but it's also very different from what Thor should be. But it's fun. So
but it's fun, so you're like, man.
So it was just Marvel throwing their hands up in the air, just like, we don't know what to do. Let's just do whatever. But I don't know. Like, just the fish out of water stuff gets old real fast.
Yes.
And he's just kind of stuck depowered the entire time. And then when he does, it's not really all that interesting when he does get the powers. And there's really no reason for him to really care about Jane other than they're both attractive people.
This is extremely off topic, but an origin story that is very strange, that from adaptation from book to movie is Harry Potter. If we're talking, they mostly stick to exactly what the book says in Harry Potter, but they keep Harry for a very long time mystified by magic from then on out, you know, because it's movies, so it's all supposed to be like, wow, isn't magic great?
learn.
Yeah, like isn't magic
I think
wonderful?
that's sort of a consequence of making like a film adaptation for that specifically.
Yes, because it's like it's funny
With the
because
book, you don't
the
have
book
time
just
to-
kind of like lets like it's sure you're amazed by the magic, but like Harry's not. He's finally like just like wow, cool, you know, like
that, and you don't have time like in a book for Harry to like learn a new spell over time as he like studies these books. Like this is a movie. We just
yeah,
gotta get
he's
it
got
over
he's
with.
got to do it, and that's I think that's maybe one of the main problems in the Harry Potter movies is that they can't spend that time being like, oh yeah, I'm learning this spell and like
Yeah.
you know, like
But if we're going to like the best origin put to film specifically for superheroes,
yes, okay,
it's,
sorry,
it's a cliche statement, but I would probably go with Superman 78.
Yeah?
Not only because of the way it's presented, it's so epic, it's so irreverent, it's so poignant, and not only is it a great origin story in and of itself, it's also kind of the origin story to the superhero genre in general.
it's true,
And you see its influence.
It's funny because I could bring up so many bad origins films than I can I can't think of good ones because
But you can
like
still-
Darkman with Liam Neeson. Stop.
Darkman.
Don't I don't need any origin story. Like I just don't.
I actually like Darkman for what
What?
it is. It's not great, but I like it.
It's not good.
because it's just like Sam Raimi being like, but without the same like poignancy that he like brought to the two Spider-Man films.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I was going to bring up is you can still feel the presence and influence of that first Donner Superman movie,
in Raimi.
especially in the influence
yeah.
of the Raimi film. Like that film does not shy away from like
It's like I
I'm
love
doing
Superman.
this, but for Spider-Man. And I'd say the next time I had sort of felt that same sort of like novelty and poignance is honestly for Wonder Woman.
For Wonder Woman, yeah. I feel that. It's funny because we're reaching an age where I feel like we don't need the origins for most superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, and if we do have it, it needs they need to strip it, and or it needs to be needed. You know, like we don't.
Yeah, if you're gonna incorporate it, you also need to incorporate it well if you're not going to tell it chronologically, because something like Captain Marvel was a total mess. Because not only does the origin not really matter to the actual main character because she doesn't seem to care about her past, but it's also super confusing.
And also, origins can doom a series. Like, I'm talking a lot of origins done by Marvel have doomed them. I'm talking Eternals. Like, not Eternals, Immortals. They doomed themselves by doing an origin story first. Doomed themselves. Like that.
Oh,
like,
you're talking about Inhumans?
Inhumans. Sorry,
Inhumans.
did I say?
Yeah.
I keep saying the wrong fucking team. I'm sorry. Too many Marvel teams.
Too many teams.
Too many teams. But Inhumans, stuck on a fucking moon. One of the things I loved about Inhumans is sure you have to kind of explain who they are, but they always didn't give a shit. You know, like it was kind of like we live on a moon. We're not mutants. We're fucking weird. You know, like it's kind of like. They never cared about the origin, and then of course the show comes along, starting movie, and they're like,
originally supposed to be a movie, ended up becoming a show. I think that was mostly because there was this real big period because of the big divide between like Fox and Marvel.
Yeah.
That they were trying to do this thing where they were trying to kind of make the Inhumans like the new mutants.
The
to
new
try
mutants.
To de-emphasize the X-Men so much, and now we're just back to square one with
Yeah.
that. It's okay. Disney's gonna buy everything.
Disney's gonna
All right.
buy it all. They're still sitting on Universal's still sitting on the Hulk solo film. I'm sure
Well,
they'll
here's the
buy,
thing.
and they're also sitting
The
on
only
another
thing-
solo film.
the only thing
not Swamp Thing. What's the one they have?
Man-Thing?
Man-Thing. There you go.
Well, here's the thing. The only thing that Universal has,
As you can tell, I'm a very DC guy. That's why I can't get all these Marvel
I
references.
do want to
right.
clarify, the only thing that Universal has rights-wise to the Hulk films is just the right of first refusal.
Yeah, they don't actually own to make it.
Yeah,
Like,
they just say,
like
if Marvel wants to make a solo Hulk film, Universal has the option to be like, we will distribute it. Or we could say no, and you can.
Yeah.
That's all they have.
Yeah.
Which is so weird that they don't want to make a Hulk film specifically because of that. Because, one, they've worked with Universal before with The Incredible Hulk, And 2, if you guys can fucking get along with Sony, you can get along with Universal.
Yeah, but this is one of those things that we're reaching an age where Disney wants the whole pie instead of a little bit of the pie. Before it was like, oh, I'll take a pie piece from everybody and that will be great. But now we're reaching an age where Disney's like, I want you only streaming from Disney Plus because we own everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's like they want to control the whole environment, and that's the difference. Is that we've reached an age where working with other people is hard for Disney instead of it being like what they do as a lifeblood. You know, like
it's ridiculous and it's shady as hell. But that's its whole other thing. It's not like
that's a whole other podcast. But
I think Disney has everything back now.
Yeah.
The only other thing was like Man-Thing, and last time I checked, Namor was at Universal, but
Yes.
they might have him back. I don't know.
I don't know how that
Because it's
deal
not like they're
shook
using
out.
him. It's not like they're using him.
Not like they're gonna make a standalone Namor film. Like, but then you have to look at DC, who's trying to handle the origin situation right now.
Yeah.
Like, so they're trying to. It's funny because they don't want to do a bunch of origin films, but they kind of have to. You know, like it's like so we get movies like Aquaman, where it's not an origin film, but it's how he becomes the Aquaman we know.
Yes.
You know, like it's not.
He already has his powers. He already knows what to do, but
Which is the
because we
part
had
that
him
most of
in
the time
Justice League.
I don't need.
Yeah.
When we're talking DC films, I didn't need like it's important for Shazam. I get it. It's important. The origin is literally it. You know, like Batman, you can't separate Shazam from his origin other than being like, yeah, there's a fucking wizard. When I say his name, he fucking turns me into a giant adult. Like, you know, like it's just like that's like you can't shy away from the origin because it's integral. But it's also one of those things that I was sitting there during that movie being like, I get what you're doing, but move faster. Like I was just like just a little bit faster. Like they were like moving at a good pace, but I was just like, I get it. Like, I get it. Move along. But it's definitely I feel like they've learned from that. They don't want to keep doing origin films. Like, I don't think if we get a Green Lantern film, we will get an origin of a Green Lantern. I think we will get. I think we'll get some space copy. Thing,
which
like,
would probably be better for it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't imagine they'll do it for the Flash either if that movie ever actually comes out.
I think we'll get the lightning bolt, but I don't think we'll get.
We won't get like my struggles starting out because this Barry already very clearly is still starting out. I mean, he didn't even call himself the Flash until the CW version of the Flash suggested it. That's a whole thing.
Really? I didn't even think about that. He doesn't call himself the Flash in the Justice League.
When he meets Grant Gustin's version of the Flash, which happened, by the way, in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it was awesome.
That's pretty dope.
He's just like, he's like, I'm the Flash, you're the Flash. He's just like, I'm the what?
I'm the what?
It's like, oh yeah, he actually never really called himself the Flash in Justice League, did he?
You're like, wait, what did we call him in the credits? The Flash. Why didn't we say it during the thing? Like, oh god,
I'm just the fast man.
I'm just the fastest man alive. But it's interesting because I'm not saying that we should get rid of all origin stories. Of course not. I'm just saying we need to trim down. We need to move forward, and we need to stick to the ones that work, like Year One, like Mask of the Fantastic. Like, you know, I know I say Batman a lot, but like some of the Superman ones, you know, like we were saying, there's great origin stories. It just doesn't have to happen every time. I think it's great that Homecoming wasn't a direct origin, even though it was very much like growing pains. Like, like that's the only parts that I was kind of like, why do we have to have this? Like, but you have. It's like Disney always wants you to grow up with the characters, so it's kind of like one of those things.
And I get that, but it's never not necessarily necessary.
I feel like the latest main fatigue was Captain Marvel. I really didn't need it.
Well, it also doesn't help that the origin makes no sense because that movie's a mess.
Yeah.
Like, think about this. How do Captain Marvel's powers actually work?
She's a Kree something? she got infected with a
with the Kree web. See, it's
engine?
unclear.
Like, it's very
that's
unclear.
The problem.
That's the problem. Like, it's funny because it almost seems like Green Lantern's origin, where it's like, oh, why did this plane crash?
Yeah,
you know.
And
Like,
to be fair, that was sort of Carol's thing in the comics, and they actually try to dial back on that because of the similarity with Green Lantern. Because that's kind of how it happened. It was just like Captain Marvel showed up. It's just like, I can't do it here. It was basically like the Abin Sur.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, here's a ring. Here's a power ring. Instead, it was like, here's a power. Like, and, that's not a bad thing. There's supposed to be a call for action, but really, it does not play in Captain Marvel.
Yeah, it's really case by case, I think.
It's wild. That movie, I only, remember now, and, is the Samuel L. Jackson stuff. Everything else, I just felt like
you just kind of
forgetful.
It out.
It's just please make that disappear.
It's a mess.
It's just like everything else about the Samuel L. Jackson parts were great. I was like, hey, great, he's killing
Except
it.
when he's running.
It's
like, oh yeah, this is an old man. Should have gotten a double for that or something. But
that's the same thing as the Irishman with the shaft sideways punching.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ridiculous. But I think it's a case-by-case basis as to whether or not you really need to show the origin.
Yeah.
It varies from character to character. Like, if you're going to do that Flash movie, you don't necessarily need it.
Nope.
If you want to do something like Swamp Thing, the origin's integral to Swamp Thing, so you kind of need that.
Yeah. I mean, sure, you could just be like, yeah, he's a monster in the swamp, but eventually you'll have to get to it.
Yeah, but the whole thing is about, am I man or am I monster? Yeah. So you kind of need that essential piece.
Exactly.
The DC Universe Swamp Thing show was so good. And then they killed it. And I'm so mad.
But it's funny because there's certain heroes that are really big right now, like Harley Quinn, that don't need an origin story. Yeah. You don't really need to know what caused them to be who they are. It's just like they are that character.
Thankfully, we already know what it is, so what's the point in showing it? We got the glimpses of it in Suicide Squad. What do you need more
Exactly.
of?
You don't need anything more. And it's funny because that Birds of Prey has a bunch of origin stories there too, but it's but it's the journey again. It's the entirety of the journey instead of it being like, let me stall you before the actual journey start. The best way to describe this is what if the first half of New Hope was just Luke and Obi hanging out on Tatooine for 40 fucking minutes. I'm talking, because in reality, they're only there for 20, maybe even less minutes on Tatooine, and that's important. Yeah. It's like we are not this is the beginning of the story, not a thing stopping the story from happening, like Doctor Strange or Captain Marvel. I would have much rather a fully powered Captain Marvel like we get in Endgame. It's just yes, of course, super powerful woman. Pff, who cares? I don't care. I don't need to know where the fuck she got the powers, even though that was a big secret and then it wasn't.
And they already had that advantage with them just having that Easter egg at the end of Infinity War. You could have just been, I'm an old friend of Nick's. How'd you guys meet? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, right. Don't worry about it. You're just oh, jeez. It's just one of those things that I feel like Marvel needs to stop. DC needs to make sure it's integral.
Yeah.
And Image and Dark Horse need to make more movies. Basically. Because they're doing these origin films for their superheroes, and then they don't get beyond that because they don't have the budget. I'm worried Bloodshot, now that it got fucking shot in the fucking foot by coronavirus, will that, I don't care if the movie's good or not, but there's a lot of Bloodshot comics. You could think that there's probably a fuckload of Bloodshot movies potential, we
gotta get the Ninjak movie.
Ninjak.
Bloodshot's not even Image or Dark Horse. Is
it
Valiant? I think.
Oh shit!
Yeah, real obscure.
Shit, I forgot. Yeah. And it's one of those things that I'm not against the origin. I just want you guys to realize that people don't want it. You know, like people want if you're gonna have an origin, you got a surprise.
Yeah.
Or else it's not worth it. So is that is that pretty much it? Is that
run through it all?
But thank you guys for tuning in. You can witness the origin of our podcast by going back to the first episode if you want.
Catch up transitional episode.
But that's it. Otherwise, you don't need an origin story to listen to the Warp Shelf podcast. You can jump in on any episode. So please do. Please give us a listen. Please go to galaxygeek.com. It's where we originate from. And check out some of our articles that we write on there. And please, guys, comment, talk to us. We would love to talk about these things. If I forgot an origin story or you want to talk about, let's talk about it. If you're like, I think Wolverine's origin's stupid and we didn't cover it at all, we'll be like, well, you know, Wolverine Origins is stupid.
Wolverine Origin is a good book. X-Men Origins Wolverine is a bad movie.
Yes. There you go. There's a classification there. But guys, please talk to us about this stuff. We'd love to talk more about it. And please listen to us on the next episode. Adios.
See you next time.